Hi, everybody. Dr. Shook here. Hope you're doing well today. Today's podcast is a special podcast. I want to focus on a very important and timely topic, and this is supporting the immune system. In particular, we're going to cover 3 keys to supporting the immune system when you have Hashimoto's without utilizing nutritional supplements. Supplements can be very helpful. They often are there to support and add to things that you might be deficient in your diet, vitamins, minerals, and then you can also get into herbs that can have some very helpful and beneficial effects on human physiology and the immune system. But that is really something that should be exactly as it's defined as a supplement. It should be something that you use in addition to a healthy diet and lifestyle. And what I'm going to do is go into 3 of the key things that should be foundational to support immunity when you have Hashimoto's. And really, this applies to anyone. This applies to anyone that's trying to optimize their health, their physiology, and their immune system, because a lot of this ties into just getting the body to work normally and trying to support just normal immune function. This is, as we've seen with COVID and with a lot of the respiratory um, issues that occur when the disease process or when the inflammatory process does not resolve, when you have continued inflammation of the lungs that's persistent, it creates a lot of complications. And one of the key things there is there's not a resolution of the inflammatory response, and it's a very complicated process. But really, at the heart of it, what we want is we want a normal and an optimal immune response. So let's go ahead and talk about a few of those things and give you some ideas on things that you can begin implementing in your everyday life. So the first thing that I want to just define is, what does it mean to support immunity? And really, what I'm focusing on here is optimal immune function, which just is normal immune function. And basically, that means that there are 3 key things that we want to focus on here. We want, when your body is, and we're just going to let's just use a virus as an example. When your body is infected with a virus, you should have an immune response against the virus to help clear the virus from the body. So there should be a mobilization of immune cells that fights off the virus, and then once the virus is gone, the immune system should then return to a normal state where it is not mobilizing cells to fight something off, because the pathogen or the virus is gone in this case. Okay, so you should be able to, for normal immune function, your immune system should be able to mobilize cells, and then it should be able to resolve the inflammatory process. Those are 2 different things. Whenever you come in contact with a virus or a pathogen, there should be an immune response. Once the virus or pathogen is cleared, it should be resolved. The inflammatory response should be resolved. Then the third thing is your immune system should go back to its resting state, which is just a state of surveillance where it's looking for things that are foreign. Okay. So what we want is, we want our body to do that. We don't want there to be an abnormally, an over aggressive immune response. We don't want there to be a not sufficient immune response. We also don't want an immune response to persist and not resolve when it should resolve and come back to a non inflammatory state, because the inflammatory response is actually the response against the pathogen to clear it, to get rid of it, right? So it's an adaptive response to clear the pathogen. But we want everything to work normally, and that's really what I want to make sure that you understand, is that what does it mean to support immunity and to have a normal immune response really is what we're after here. So that's what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about utilizing something to get an added immune response, or talking about utilizing supplements maybe to resolve the inflammation. I'm just talking about, what do we need to look at a minimum, from like a dietary and lifestyle perspective, to help us with normal immune response. So the first key to supporting immunity when you have Hashimoto's is that you absolutely have to prioritize sleep. You cannot skimp on sleep. This is, whenever I first started in functional medicine, I thought that, the pinnacle of helping, or of achieving health, was probably related to diet, and then to assist with getting us there with optimizing our diet was the utilization of supplementation to support deficiencies and then possibly kill pathogens and rebalance the body. But I really did not have the same level of appreciation for sleep. I didn't have that same understanding. And over the past at least 5 years for sure, there's been a tremendous amount of research and increased clarity about the importance of sleep. And there's Matthew Walker, who is a Stanford professor and researcher. He has written a fantastic book on sleep. He's been on numerous podcasts, and he really has done a world-class job, just one of the best jobs ever at putting this information together and explaining the consequences of not getting enough sleep and the benefits of sleeping. And I'll tell you this, that really when I'm working with my clients, I really look at their sleep as one of the very first things, because we know that if you lack sufficient sleep and sufficient deep sleep, then you're going to have a greater likelihood of having problems with the immune system. You're also going to have more issues with inflammation. You're more likely to have issues with blood sugar dysregulation, which then creates a lot of other metabolic problems that can drive inflammation and really start to put you in a vicious cycle that is very difficult to break. And so this is now probably one of my primary focuses when I start working with someone, is like, how are they sleeping? And if they're not sleeping well, why are they not sleeping well? So we get into really trying to track what's happening, whether that be using a smartphone app that listens to see if you're making noises or snoring, because that can be a huge issue. Sleep apnea is the biggest and one of the most detrimental factors on a good night's sleep, and a lot of people have no idea that they have it. So have them use a smartphone app. If they have a smart watch, I have them utilize wear the watch, or if they have an Aura ring or something that they can actually track their sleep and observe their oxygen saturation at night. That can be a complete game changer. And then if we know that there's sleep apnea, and then we really the next step is you absolutely need to have a sleep study. And there's nothing wrong with getting a sleep study done earlier in this investigative process if there's some pretty obvious problems with snoring. These are really important things to do, because your immune system and so many physiological functions and hormones are very dependent upon a restful night's sleep. So this is really, really critical. So a few tips here. There are a lot of resources, so I don't want to go into a ton of detail. Again, Matthew Walker's book is fantastic. Stanford professor, researcher on sleep. But a few tips for you. So a few things that I found to be most helpful. First of all, don't eat at least 3 hours before you plan on going to sleep. I would really say 4 hours, maybe 5 hours before going to sleep, because digestion is really going to take away from your sleep. And I've tracked my sleep for years, and I know that whenever I have at least 4 hours between my last meal and bed, that I can see that my deep sleep, I have more deep sleep, I have much more restful sleep, and it's very predictable. It's something that, and there's going to be some degree of individuality to this. Obviously, there's a lot of individuality to a lot of these topics we're going to discuss, but for sure, not eating really close to bedtime is super important. I mean, minimum of 3 hours. Probably it's more likely to have about a 4-hour gap. So that's the first thing. The second thing is, if you can get between 8 and as soon as the sun comes up till about 2 hours after that, whatever that time frame is for you, but typically by about 10 a.m. in the morning, if you can get at least 10 minutes of sunlight exposure, and that's not through a window but outside, that is going to really help to entrain your circadian or daily rhythms. That's going to help to set up to help with your cortisol production in the morning, and then that just helps to entrain the body's daily rhythms for cortisol and melatonin production. Okay, that helps to set the rhythm. That can be a huge game changer for people. So a great way to do this would be to go outside and walk for say 10 minutes to 30 minutes is even better. but to get outside in the sun and move if possible. But if you're just even if you're just outside having some coffee in the morning for 10 minutes at least, getting light exposure, that's going to be really helpful. So those are a few of the things to help and train the rhythms. At night, sleep in a cold room. I mean, 68 degrees is probably a good target, if not colder than that. That's what the research has shown to be beneficial. Have a nighttime routine where you're winding down and you're not staring at bright screens. A few hours before bed. Try to I like to try and have dinner by like candlelight. I know it doesn't take that many candles on a table, to give you sufficient light to eat, but candlelight, and then, if you can really wind down, and it's hard with the family, I know, but if you can wind down and read a book or something for 30 minutes, or even, take a warm bath or take a warm shower. These are all things that can be really, really helpful at getting you to sleep. And then of course there are things like, which most people have heard of, like wearing the blue blocker glasses. Those can be really helpful for some people because they're really susceptible to blue light exposure, and so the blue light exposure will suppress or decrease your melatonin production, which melatonin is a very important hormone. It's a very potent antioxidant in the body, but it's also helpful for sleep. So this is really helpful. And then the last thing I'll say is, try not to have caffeine, you know, I would say 8 hours before you're planning on going to sleep. So at a minimum. And if you can really make that about 10 hours, have your last, cup of whatever drink or tea or coffee, that caffeine containing beverage, at least, 8 to 10 hours. 10 hours is better before bed. That's gonna really help you to get to sleep and have deeper sleep. And again, I've tested this on myself, and it's been very predictable in a lot of the people that I've worked with. So that's key number one. Don't skimp on sleep. It's super important. And this was what I have up. If you're listening to this on audio, then you won't be able to see this. But if you're actually watching the podcast, the video version, I have a research paper where this was out of Physiological Reviews. This was published in 2019, March of 2019, and it's the sleep immune crosstalk in health and disease. And this is a diagram from the paper, and they're basically just showing here the connection between the immune system and sleep, and how when you have disturbed sleep, it can create problems for the immune system, and when the immune system is dysfunctional, it can create problems for sleep. So it's a vicious cycle that can occur. But there's some great papers out there on this topic, and again, check out Matthew Walker's book. It's on Amazon. It's a fantastic book, and he's done tons of podcasts that have really gone into more depth and detail on this. Okay, key number two to supporting immunity when you have Hashimoto's without the utilization of supplements is that you need to eat to support your immunity and your immune system. So the key things here with your diet and supporting your immunity are to avoid foods that trigger an immune response, to cut out processed sugar, eat the colors of the rainbow daily, and eat a large variety of vegetables and fruit that contain sufficient and good amounts of fiber, and to reduce the consumption of inflammatory foods. And I'll go into this a little bit more detail. I just wanted to hit the key points here. So number one, avoiding foods that trigger an immune response. This is kind of goes hand in hand with the last point of reducing the consumption of inflammatory foods. So when you can actually measure immunological responses to food. So you can measure immune responses to food, and you can do that by doing a blood test that evaluates your immunoglobulins, or your antibodies, against different food peptides or proteins. Okay, so all foods contain protein, even if it's a very low amount of protein. Plants contain proteins. We think of protein, if you think about food, you think of like typically some type of traditionally speaking, some type of like animal based protein, right? Like a meat, for example, as being protein containing food, but all foods contain proteins, even if they're at very, very low amounts. They still contain proteins. And when we're talking about avoiding foods that trigger an immune response, the quantitative analysis of that would be to do a blood test to look at your immune system and see if you are making antibodies against any particular food proteins or the food protein peptides, which is a part of the protein. Like it's a piece of the protein that you could be reacting to actually see immunologically what is your immune system recognizing and seeing and reacting to. That's the first clue that a food that you're eating may be driving an inflammatory response. Now, of course, you can eat foods, and if you don't feel well when you eat the food, that's a sign that it doesn't agree with you for a variety of reasons. It doesn't mean that you're having an immune response, as I'm referring to, that you quantify with antibodies. But it could be that you're having problems processing some of the sugars or the carbohydrates in there, and that your gut bacteria aren't breaking them down, or maybe maybe you have yeast in the gut and that's causing fermentation, or bacteria in the gut that's causing fermentation and you're bloating, and there's a lot of different reasons that you could react to a food other than what I'm referring to with an immunological response. None of the reactions to food are good, even if it's not related to an immunological response that we can evaluate with antibodies or a food sensitivity test. But this is one of the things that you want to focus on first, is to support your immunity. I would avoid foods that trigger immune responses, because when your immune system is reacting to a food, it's detracting from the immune system's response to other more pressing and more important things like pathogens, potential cancer cells. I mean, anything where immune surveillance um, is reduced, the immune surveillance is reduced, and the immune system's energy and focus is having to be placed on something like food proteins that you're constantly eating that are coming in. That's going to detract from other areas that where the immune system, you may want it to be present and working. So we don't want to constantly stimulate and burden the immune system with food proteins that we're reacting to. So a few things that you can do there to evaluate foods that are potentially inflammatory or that trigger an immune response is to, you can follow, like, from a trial and error based approach, you could follow an elimination diet, which is basically a very restricted diet that takes a lot of the foods that are commonly inflammatory out of the diet, so that you can evaluate over, a week or two, or maybe even a month, how food is impacting the way that you feel and function. You could do that, or you could do a food sensitivity test that is a high quality, reproducible food sensitivity test that looks at cooked and raw versions of food additives, and helps you to quantify actual, the specific foods that you're reacting to. And a lot of times doing those in combination is great, because there are, as I'd mentioned earlier, there's a lot of reasons that you might have an immunological response to a food. Okay. So food sensitivity testing plus an elimination diet can be helpful. If you're interested in like a dietary approach, you could check out our transformation program that we put together for our clients and for people that don't have a chance to work with me one-on-one. That you can go to thyroidprogram.com. That's just THYROD program, PROGRAM.com. And you can check out our transformation program. It's basically free. We charge $1 for it. That's because we had a lot of spam registrations, and it was just terrible. So I decided to charge $1 for it, and that cut out all of the nonsense with the registrations that were probably from bots of some kind. So that's so again, key number 2 to support your immunity with Hashimoto's without utilizing supplements. Our second key is to eat to support your immunity. So we just talked about avoiding foods that trigger an immune response, right? So we said following an elimination diet or food sensitivity testing in combination can be really helpful. The second thing is to cut out processed sugar. Now, I think everyone should have heard this by now. This is not like a revolutionary thing, but it's really important to remind ourselves to cut out processed sugar, because sugar has so many deleterious effects on the body. I mean, it one of the worst things that it does is it really has this very profound and strong influence on your production of insulin. And insulin, is a hormone. It's a hormone released by the pancreas. And when insulin goes up, well, first of all, insulin is a growth hormone. So anything in your body is going to be receiving, basically any tissue in your body is going to be receiving signals to grow. Okay. So insulin's not bad, but when you consume something like sugar, it really can cause your pancreas to release a significant amount of insulin, so much to the degree that it drives inflammatory responses. It creates a lot of problems physiologically. It promotes an inflammatory response, but it can also result in reactive hypoglycemia. So basically, you eat a bunch of sugar, your blood sugar spikes significantly, a lot, right? Your insulin surges because the insulin's job is to lower the blood sugar, take the blood sugar from the bloodstream, and basically put it into storage or into the cells of the body for energy production, for the utilization of energy production. But what happens in a lot of cases is that the sugar surges, the insulin goes way up, and then because the insulin had such a dramatic surge and spike, it causes the blood sugar to drop rapidly, and it actually goes too low. And then you have reactive hypoglycemia, or low blood sugar, after consuming the sugar. And then it puts you in this roller coaster of high and low blood sugar. This wreaks absolute havoc on your hormones, your immune function. Everything is just really compromised. It's a not a good thing. So cut out the processed sugar. The third thing is try to eat the colors of the rainbow daily. Now, the colors of the rainbow are important, and I'm just to keep it real simple here, there are all of these phytonutrients in plants that cause them to have a variety of colors. Okay. These phytonutrients have been shown to do a number of different things in the body, and a lot of beneficial things. They help so many different ways physiologically. Uh, One of the key things, though, is that these colors that are in foods, they they're different chemical compounds. Again, they feed our gut bacteria. Okay, and the gut bacteria, you need to have a very robust and diverse population or populations of gut bacteria. You need to have diverse bacteria, lots of different types of bacteria, and they need to be robust and healthy. And you feed and encourage your GI tract bacteria to grow with different types of fibers, which we're going to talk about in just a second. Different types of fibers. So plants contain a lot of different fibers. That's important. And these flavonoids, these polyphenols, these chemicals in the plants, these different colors that give different colors, they also feed these bacteria. So this is really important, and the gut bacteria is absolutely critical for a healthy immune response. Your GI tract is one of the key barrier systems in the body, and a barrier system is basically where the outside world and the inside environment in your body meet. And that barrier system, when it is inflamed, when it is damaged, it really compromises the immune system. It activates the immune system, and things that are outside of the body can readily pass into the body, into the bloodstream through a compromised barrier system like the gut lining. There's a term called leaky gut. It's a lay term, but in the scientific literature, if you research or if you go to pubmed.gov and you type in intestinal permeability, you will find a ton of literature published on this now. And that's the scientific term for leaky gut, where things move from the inside environment or from the outside environment into the inside environment, trigger an immune response. This is really what we're talking about here with avoiding foods that trigger an immune response. Our first key point, and that is, to avoid that, one of the things you need is a healthy GI tract lining. So trying to eat the colors of the rainbow each day helps the gut bacteria to be more robust and healthy, helps to keep the gut environment healthy, helps to keep the gut lining healthy, which helps to keep the immune system healthy. You literally have in your bloodstream, you have these cells called antigen presenting cells. This is an immune cell. It's a type of immune cell that will literally come to the barrier system. It will move to the gut barrier system, which is one cell thick, one cell wall thick. This antigen presenting cell will move to the gut barrier. It will stick a finger like projection between the cells, and it will sample the inside a GI tract environment. And this antigen presenting cell will then present what it finds to other cells of the immune system, which will can create a cascade of an immune response and inflammatory response. And so the immune system is constantly sampling the environment in the gut. So the gut has to be healthy for the immune system to be optimal and to really function optimally. And so these are all key things to focus on. You really the next thing that you need to focus on. So we've covered avoid foods that trigger an immune response, cut out processed sugar, eat the colors of the rainbow daily, eat a large variety of vegetables and fruits. That will help you to get the colors in, okay, the colors of the rainbow, but also this will give you a significant amount of fiber. It will give you antioxidants and these flavonoids, these compounds in the foods, and polyphenols, these colors of the foods. The the fiber is something I really want to emphasize here. This is probably the important point here with this particular aspect of eating to support your immunity is fiber. Fiber consumption and a variety of fiber. It's not just like, hey, I'm going to go to the store and buy psyllium, and I'm just going to consume and drink, psyllium husk to give me fiber. That's not sufficient. You need It's good, but what you need to do is you need a variety of fibers. You need to be eating fibers from a number of different plant-based sources primarily, because it's been shown that these fibers help to feed the gut microbiome, the gut bacteria. So you want a diverse number of fibers, plant-based fibers that you consume on a daily basis. And so there's one of my doctors I've had a great opportunity to learn from. One of the people that I think is had the greatest influence on me is Dr. Kharrazain, an absolutely fantastic person, a great educator, great teacher. He introduced me to the idea of a microbiome mashup. That was the term coined, and it makes sense. But it's basically you just go to the store and you buy one of every green thing you can find, basically leafy vegetable, one of every herb that you can find, fresh herbs that you can find, and you cut up the whole thing. Even when you might discard, have typically discarded the green leaves of, let's say, let me see what type of, like, let's say carrots, right? Like the green tops. You would actually cut these up, just wash everything and cut them up, and then you can put them in like a food processor. I know this sounds like a lot of work, but you make a big batch of this, and then you can put it into a container and put it in the freezer. And then each morning you take a tablespoon or so, you put it in some water, you mix it up, or you put it in you make a smoothie, you blend it up, and you drink it in there, and then you get this diverse these diverse plant-based fibers every single day from a lot of different vegetables at once, and this really helps to feed the diversity of the gut. Now, you can, just like me, sometimes I'll do something that not most people are going to tolerate, but I'm cool with it. I'll just take like a tablespoon, I'll put it in a little bit of water, and I will just basically chug it down and basically swallow it. So I do it that way. It's pretty easy because I don't always feel like having a shake, and I don't really want something that's going to like break a fast necessarily. So just that's what I'll consume. And then let's see. So to recap, okay. Key number 2 to supporting immunity with Hashimoto's without using supplements is to eat to support your immunity. The keys to eating to support your immunity, my opinion, are to, number 1, avoid foods that trigger immune responses, cut out processed sugar, eat the colors of the rainbow daily, eat a large variety of vegetables and fruits for the fiber and the fiber diversity. Consider doing something like a microbiome mashup. And those are the key things. I mean, that's what you really want to do as far as diet goes. So our second key was really to eat for your immunity. And if you are viewing the video podcast, if you're just listening, but if you're viewing the video, what I have put up on the screen is a research paper or a screenshot of an abstract of a research paper published in June of 2020. And the title is The Interaction Between the Microbiota and Immunity in Health and Disease. So the microbiota is the environment of the GI tract. So this is the interaction between the microbiota and immunity in health and disease. This was in Cell Research. And basically, there is a tremendous amount of research that has been going on, and that is, that is underway today, looking at this connection between our microbiome and our immune system, and they're very much interconnected, intertwined, and very important. So our third key to supporting immunity with Hashimoto's without utilizing supplementation is to optimize thyroid hormone physiology. Now, this is an important aspect of your health because every cell in your body has receptors for thyroid hormone. And when you don't have thyroid hormone, you're going to have suboptimal cellular function. And this is an important thing to understand because every single cell in the body requires thyroid hormone to carry out its internal physiological processes. Every cell, every cell requires thyroid hormone to stimulate cellular energy production. So each cell has to produce energy, and it does so through mitochondria. And without your thyroid hormone, you're not going to produce energy intracellularly in the mitochondria. And if you can't do that, then the cells cannot carry out their physiological job, whatever their job is to do. There's different types of cells; they have different jobs, but they can't carry out their physiological processes. So you're going to have suboptimal physiological function if your thyroid is not optimized. So it's some of the keys here, and this is one of the things that I want to mention too. Every cell in the body, when I say every cell in the body, I mean every single cell in the body, including your blood cells, including your red blood cells, your white blood cells, your blood cells. Your white blood cells are your immune cells, and this is this is important to understand because if your immune cells don't have optimal thyroid function, do you think that's going to be a good thing for your immune system? Probably not, right? So it's important to understand thyroid hormone physiology is key. So what you need to do is ask your doctor to check more than just your TSH. What I recommend that you do is ask your doctor to check TSH at least one time, so you can get an overview of the thyroid hormone physiological the four phases of physiological function. And so the four phases of any hormone in the body is, just remember this acronym, PTSD. Okay, most people know that from post traumatic stress disorder, but that's not what we're talking about here. What we're talking about here is production, transportation, sensitivity, and detoxification. Every hormone in the body has to go through all four of these physiological steps. Okay. So production is the amount of hormone produced. Transportation is, can the hormone be transported through the bloodstream efficiently? Sensitivity is sensitivity at the cell. Once the hormone makes it to the cell, can the cell use it? And then detoxification is the clearance, the metabolism and breakdown and clearance of the hormone once it's been utilized. So what I recommend is that you ask your doctor at least once to check more than just your TSH, to check TSH, check your total T4, total T3, free T4, free T3, check your reverse T3 uptake, and then check you for Hashimoto's. Check for thyroid peroxidase antibodies or TPO antibodies. Check for thyroid globulin antibodies. And this will help to give you a much clearer picture of what is actually happening with your thyroid physiology than just looking at TSH, which is really inadequate. I mean, it is still the standard today just to look at TSH, and it's, you know what, it's a good test. It helps, and it gives a lot of great information, but I've found frequently that TSH alone is not sufficient. That you'll often find a TSH that's within the lab's reference range, but it's either too high or too low. And then when you start to look at the hormones and you look at like reverse T3, which can go up higher in people that have autoimmune diseases and inflammatory conditions and deficiencies of selenium and zinc, and you find that there are some significant issues with sensitivity at the cell. There's some significant issues with suboptimal production of the hormone. You look at something like T3 uptake, which is an indirect measure of your thyroid hormone binding globulin, the transport protein in the blood that carries thyroid hormone. And you'll see that some women that have estrogen dominance, or men that have testosterone, or in any human being, but you see this more commonly in women, that there will be scenarios where they're estrogen dominant, and it can just be hormonally. It can be, which might be tied to diet or other things that are setting up the environment for estrogen dominance. It could be that they're taking estrogens, and the estrogen dominance causes their thyroid hormone binding globulins, little transport proteins in the blood, to go really high, and that will cause them to bind and hold on to a lot of their T4 and T3 hormones. So it's bound to these little proteins in the blood. It's not free. it's the free hormones are not, then the hormone is not free. There's lower free amounts. It's not freely available for the cells to use. So the hormone is there as far as production goes, but it's not available for the cells because of a sex hormone problem and typically higher estrogens. So these are huge issues, right? These are huge issues that are not well understood, and it's complicated. I get it. I mean, it's taken me a long time to wrap my head around all of the ways that the systems of the body can crosstalk and interact and cause dysfunction. So this is, what I would suggest is like really get your thyroid worked up to the best of your ability, and then excuse me, if you're able to get this workup done and you identify some problems, then what I would do is I would really encourage your doctor, ask your doctor, say, okay, now that we see that I have these other issues, let's say that you get the full panel done. Say, now I've got these other issues, could we please check my levels a little bit more frequently until until we get my hormones balanced and everything makes sense. And just see if they'll do the testing a little bit more frequently than say every 6 months, which is pretty common, right? Or every year. That's a long time to wait to see how your hormones change and how you do. That's a long time for you not to feel well, if you're not feeling well based on the changes that are made. So what I recommend is every 6 weeks or 2 months or 3 months at the longest, especially if you're changing up levels. I mean, that's plenty of time for you to, in my opinion, for you to evaluate what's happening. Now, if you have Hashimoto's and your immune system is attacking your thyroid hormone levels and your TSH are going to be all over the place. And one of the primary things that you need to do, in addition to looking at these levels, is you need to focus on identifying the triggers and drivers of the autoimmune process to the very best of your ability. I mean, that's what I do when I work with people one-on-one. We do, there are a lot of things that we understand now that can drive and perpetuate some of these autoimmune attacks against the thyroid. But what I'll often do is do very in-depth testing to look at immunological triggers. We'll look at food proteins, we'll look at pathogens, and we'll look at chemicals. We'll look at the gut and the environment of the GI tract. We'll often look at the adrenals and how the body's producing cortisol over a 24-hour period to see if you have a normal circadian rhythm. We might look at deficiencies. We may go. There's a lot of things that we can do from a testing perspective. We'll often do a really expanded initial panel as well, where we look at these thyroid hormone levels and inflammatory markers and iron and your lipids, and really go deep on looking at a lot of these different markers to try to put the picture together to figure out what is the combination of problems that's causing and resulting in the manifestation of the symptoms of the autoimmune process. And then with that information, we can often figure out some things that are likely drivers, and we can start working on that. And over a period of time, we usually can make some really good progress there. But this is it can be complicated, but hopefully you could do some testing. You could identify some of these issues with the thyroid hormone levels, get your doctor to work with you. Maybe if needed, they, obviously talk to them and you guys make the decision. Is it reasonable to change your thyroid hormone levels? And then you retest frequently and see if you can actually make a difference. A lot of people do well when they have thyroid hormone replacement. They can do well. A lot of people with Hashimoto's, though, never feel good, and they're all over the place. I think their hormone levels are up and down because of the autoimmune attack against the thyroid, which disrupts thyroid hormone production. It can cause you to have a surge in thyroid hormone output because the gland can be destroyed, and it can dump. As the cells of the thyroid gland are destroyed, it will dump hormone into the bloodstream, and it can drive surges of thyroid hormone. So it just wreaks havoc on your levels, and nothing seems to make sense. And that's why, because the immune system is at play there, and it's really the main culprit behind the fluctuation in the thyroid hormone levels. So this is really important. So if you can't keep those levels stable, then obviously find someone to work with. And um, I work with people around the world, and we try to help as much as we can to get you on the right track. But there are a number of things that you really need to focus on. And when you're trying to support immunity and you have Hashimoto's, or just trying to support immunity in general, you really got to focus on 3 key things, right? You got to focus on sleep, diet, and the third thing here is really something that I think is not understood well and often overlooked, and that's you got to optimize thyroid hormone physiology as well. are all really key aspects. So this is a paper. Again, if you're listening, then I'll read it. But if you're watching the video version, then you can follow along with me on the video podcast. The role of thyroid hormone in innate and adaptive immune responses during infection. And this is a paper published in 2020. So basically there's a connection. Without getting too deep in this, you can the opening sentence of the abstract is, in the past decades, there's been growing evidence for a functional interaction between the thyroid hormone and the immune system. This article provides an overview of the mechanisms by which thyroid hormones affect the innate and adaptive immune response during infection. And there's different parts of the immune system. So that's the innate and the adaptive. And so there's a lot more that gets into more specific details, but feel free to look it up. This is if you just Google it, you can find it. This looks like American Physiological. I can't read it. It's covered up by my presentation software, but that's okay. You can just Google if you're interested. American Physiological Society, 2020 is where it was published. So if you're trying to figure out what to do, or if you're interested in getting some help or a roadmap to help you, if you want to try to do this on your own, you might want to consider checking out our program. It's called the Transformation Program to support optimal thyroid physiology. Our Transformation Program is basically, it walks you through what I often recommend for the clients that I work with when we don't have testing available. And it goes through dietary, lifestyle, and even supplementation that may be appropriate to help support more optimal health and physiology. So what we do is we basically, we have a program. It's all video guided. We do have a support group, and the way that it works, though, is that when you start the program, there is an orientation basically that you go through, and then you do a self-assessment. And the self-assessment helps you to understand the areas of the systems of your body, the physiology that may not be optimal, that you may need more focus on. So it really helps you to tailor what you're doing, and that helps you to tailor the supplementation more specifically to what your particular needs may be. So that's what our transformation program. You can learn more if you're interested in checking that out. It's basically free. It's $1 at thyroidprogram.com. And again, we charge $1 to keep all the spam registrations and stuff that were going on from occurring. If you need more individualized help, or if you're interested in working one-on-one with me, I do work with people across the United States and around the world. You can go to drbradshuk.com. That's DRBRAD, and then Shook, SHOOK.com, drbradshuk.com, to learn more about working with me through distance consulting. We have an application for care page, and there's a form that you can complete if you're interested to see if you're a candidate. And if we can't help you, we will absolutely point you in the very best direction that we can find for you, and we will help you get to the right person. So I do appreciate you. Thank you for hanging out with me today. I hope you'll have a wonderful day, and I look forward to talking to you again very, very soon.